Hello, everyone. Happy New Year, and welcome to the first episode of Hi Jinkx for 2022. I'm Jinkx Monsoon, and today our guest is my pal, John Cameron Mitchell, and we're going to talk about all things Hedwig and get into the nitty-gritty of the gender revolution and the renaissance of representation in mainstream media. It sounds heavy, but it's going to be a lot of fun. We have a lot of witty banter today for you on the brand new episode of Hi Jinkx. So buckle in, buckle up, buckle down, hunker down, and, listen to this podcast.
Forever Dog.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jinkx Monsoon, and welcome to Hi Jinkx, a podcast where I, an internationally tolerated drag superstar, get to interview compelling and fascinating people about how they became who they are and why they do what they do. Today, we are joined by actor, director, and playwright John Cameron Mitchell. Oh my God, how did I? John Cameron Mitchell. Hi, John.
Hi, Jinkx. Goodbye.
What an intro. So first and foremost, can you hear the little tinge of Hedwig in my internationally tolerated drag superstar?
I love that.
Of course, I couldn't say internationally ignored
it's
because
a step
I'm too
because
loud.
you're not ignored, and it's a step up. And remember when we were always pleading for tolerance as queer people, and then we're like, "Fuck that."
I want more than tolerance.
Exactly.
I want special rights just for me.
Yeah, just for me. Hope is not sufficient.
John, I'm going to start today with telling a story that I'm sure I've told you many times. I can't honestly remember, but the very first time we ever met, I was 17 in Portland, Oregon, and already a huge fan of Hedwig and the Angry Inch. And my friend Amanda, who was friends with Elias, was invited to a screening of Elephant, directed by Gus Van Sant, and I believe
and Elias was in it. Mm-hmm.
Elias was in it, and and you were at the screening. Were you two touring together for these screenings, or you just happened to be there?
I just happened to be in town, I think. Yeah.
So I couldn't make it to the screening because I had rehearsal that night for my school play, and I rushed downtown hoping that maybe after the screening I would get to at least say hello. And what happened instead is Amanda being friends with Elias and Elias being friends with Gus Van Sant and you being there with Gus Van Sant. There was a plan to get crepes at La Happy afterward, and I showed up just in time to get invited to go with you all. And then I sat next to you at La Happy, and we all ate crepes, and I just watched you and Gus Van Sant and all these people talk, and I just sat there in awe. And at one point, I think you turned to me and said, "Could I try a bite of your crepe?"
Which can't happen anymore. It was another era.
I wanted to say you can have the whole plate of food. You can take the plate home with you, John. You can have whatever you want. It was a truly magical experience. Flash forward to many years later. Now we're buddies. We're pals.
We're buddies in bitterness. All of our shows being canceled. Returning to the online. I'm like, I was on stage last week. I managed to squeeze out 2 shows of The Origin of Love.
Just squeeze them out.
Kind of like, a little dropping the kids off at the pool. And between various variants, we managed the show.
Right now, we're just scheduling our lives between variants.
Between variants, yeah. And I would, we talk about the making of Hedwig in the show, and we're going to be doing it in LA and the 22nd at USC.
I'm hoping it will pass quickly since we've had some practice with past variants.
Yep.
But I'm also at the point after, like 2 years of this, I'm at the point where I'm not holding my breath for anything.
Oh, God. So annoying. So
Yeah.
annoying. But you got Omicron, which messed up the end of your tour. Mine is perfectly timed so I can do LA.
You scheduled your.
I scheduled my Omicron, and I was all boosted and everything. I thought I was so
Oh
cool.
yeah.
But
All of us on the tour were boosted and vaxxed and ready to go. And
boosted.
we blame it on the Denver airport. 8 hours in the Denver airport is enough to give anyone a debilitating virus.
Right. In the Delta or / Omicron lounge. Well, someday we will sing together again, maybe in an afterlife. But I'm just grateful to be alive,
Absolutely. In moments, where I'm feeling very frustrated and very bitter, I try to remember what my favorite teacher at acting school said. And it's when she would have us start out every day with like a 40-minute workout before we could get into our
I got that too.
clown
Yeah.
lessons. And
Right.
when we would be
Before she said, "You're too femme to be hired." Right.
She never said that, but she did give me the best note I've ever gotten from a director once. And she said, she threw a pencil at us and screamed, "Make me laugh or I'll kill you." And it was my favorite note I've ever gotten. When we would be complaining and like groaning and moaning about having to do our 40-minute workout, she would say, "What a wonderful experience you all are having. You all have legs and arms and bodies that can do amazing things. Now run up and down the stairs for 40 minutes."
And she wouldn't do it, would she?
No, she'd stand there and go, like root us on with like loving cynicism. Yeah.
Well, Charles Bush went to my college, Northwestern, which I never graduated from, but he came back to school and did this crazy, and it was very closety time, early 80s and AIDS, and it was very intense. And everyone in theater school was closeted. The Queenie teachers, everybody. Like 2 guys were out in theater school.
Yeah.
It's like the Fame movie, right? Where Paul McCrane, the one guy is gay in the performing arts school. And he said, I was so femme that I realized no one's going to hire me, so I wrote my own shit. And that really was the beginning. And he did a multi-character piece that was very impressive. And seeing Charles Bush, seeing Ethel Eichelberger, who is someone people don't know because he was a legend in early 80s in New York, kind of like a Justin Vivian Bond kind of character crossed with Charles Ludlam. These are the people, and then you, if I'd known you, but who inspired me to do my own shit.
Well, I was 3, John.
Oh. But you could have inspired me. You could have stepped up. But it's a new era for queer performers, for performers of any performance of difference. People of color, performers of interest, people of size. Anyone now has more options to do stuff. Of course, Drag Race allowed a certain kind of person. I was too old for Drag Race.
Drag Race opened the gates of hell, and demons came spilling out of it.
There's all those demons, and and all the bitter queens who are a little bit older saying, "Why weren't we on it?" Rue, I know you, Rue. I know your secrets. God bless Lady Bunny. All these people were my heroes, and even meeting you. Not back then, you weren't a hero. You were a crepe delivery system, but you weren't a content provider yet. But then later, when I went to see you with Neil Patrick Harris, when he was preparing his Hedwig, and he wanted to go to see you for research.
Yeah.
Not friendship, research.
That was a mind-blowing night.
It was so beautiful. What a great night. We all just worship you.
it was one of those really surreal moments. Um, I was doing my off-Broadway show, The Vaudevillians in New York, and it was you. Stephen came too, right? Stephen
Stephen
Trask,
Trask. Yeah.
Neil Patrick Harris, and the director of Hedwig on Broadway, which was Michael
Michael
Mayer, right?
Mayer. Hmm.
Yeah,
They,
and to know that you to be performing, I mean, my show was nothing like Hedwig in content, but it was very much, it was the first show I wrote for myself, and it was me performing in drag as a character that was not just, me in drag. It was a character with a whole life and a whole story to tell. And in many ways, it was like, it was this daunting, surreal, and very exciting moment to be performing my show for someone who had written a show that had impacted my life. I first saw Hedwig when I was probably 14 or 15. I went down to the Hollywood Video near my house when you had to rent your videos physically in real space. And I remember I remember picking the movie out, and it was shortly after I had just rented Rocky Horror, and I remember my mom looking at the DVD cover for Hedwig and the Angry Inch, and then looking at me and was like, "Is this all you're gonna watch now? Is movies like this?"
and you're like, yeah.
Yeah, Mom. And that movie changed my life. It was, well, I hadn't known that it was a stage show first. But the movie had a huge impact on my life. The music had a huge impact on my life and continues to. But I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start further back.
Let's start with your favorite color.
Yeah. I've seen so many interviews with you, so I feel like I know a lot of your story. I don't know how much of your story my listeners will know, but before Hedwig and the Angry Inch, you had a whole life before Hedwig.
I had fucked my way to the middle by that point. Hedwig lowered me into the lower middle because it was not cool. Drag was not classy. It still isn't. But,
if we can help it, yeah.
Right. It was considered not, art, and it was considered low class, kind of like sex worker. It was like a sex worker, and we should be so lucky to be a good sex worker. But to me, I worshipped the performers that I saw who were pushing the boundaries of drag, because drag, of course, is just a form, and you can do anything with it. You can be cheap, you can be classy, you can do Shakespeare with it, you can do Betty Bourne, and play Lady Bracknell in the West End, as a man playing a woman. And so drag can be, all kinds, female to male, male to female, female to fag, fag to female, anything goes with performing, being aware of gender in your performance. And I was scared of it, terrified, because the feminine was the worst thing in the world. We were taught that being like a boy being like a girl is worse than a boy killing someone, because it's unnatural. Murder wasn't.
The people teaching us that could not see anything worse than a man giving up his male privilege, which
That's
you
right.
inherently do when you start doing drag. You are giving up your male privilege in many ways, and when you are,
which is a shocker to some. You get a different
especially
privilege.
now these days, where the artist and the drag persona are being linked so much more. Like when I started, I could go out as Jinkx and then go out as Jarek, and no one knew the two were the same person.
Right.
And such is not the case anymore. But femphobia runs deep. Misogyny runs deep in our society, and even within the queer community. And I know I've talked a lot about, being a drag queen back in the day, before the days of Drag Race, making it fun for people, making it something that people celebrate. It was like wearing a scarlet letter. It was like I had a big red D.
I grew up in that same bullshit. So I crushed my feminine side. I was able to play straight and gay. So I was just so, but AIDS radicalized me. And when I saw that it was life and death, then I was like, fuck this closet shit. There's shit to be done. So I was always very openly gay, even though I was afraid of my feminine from 1985 on, when I did my first action movie, Band of the Hand. There was some homophobic comments among the crew, and I just kind of spread it around in a casual way to the cast about my boyfriend, and suddenly the comments disappeared. A little openness quelled, it didn't change everyone's minds, but it brought manners to the situation.
Yeah.
And there was a sense of war during AIDS. It was wartime, and you did have to pick a side. And those people who were closeted and scared felt like goddamn quislings. They felt like collaborators,
Yeah.
To the system of people who were conspiring with their neglect to let us die. And I see a lot of the same things, not so much with bigotry, but insanity coming out of the COVID situation. Back then, too, interestingly, the whole anti-vax, the government is doing this kind of craziness. You saw that in the gay community back then. You saw it in reaction to safe sex. A lot of gay men identify their politicalness with their freedom to have sex. So Larry Kramer and other people saying, you got to change your sex because it's killing you. They're like, fuck you, you're a fascist, you're a collaborator. He was like, how dare you try to shut down the only way we have of proving our freedom, which was a specious way of looking at it. This was about life and death. It was very similar. And at the same time, there was a New York native who was saying it was a government plot, AIDS, to kill gay people. Or it came from a monkey, whatever, swine flu, I think was the thing they talked about. But it was just like the same paranoia was in the air. Back then it was from queer people because we were being threatened, and with now it's shifted to the right. It always shifts around the craziness, and it's worse than I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it's this is January 6th we're doing this on. A year out from the beginning of the end of democracy. I don't know. It's a very strange time, and we're still America. We're still have ingenuity. We still have ideas. We still have energy. That's the part of America I love. We still welcome the weirdos, or at least the best of us do, from around the world. Queer people are never nationalists, in my view. We're internationalists because we can go to any country and meet other queer people and feel a kinship. That's the hope of queerness, is that we can counteract all of this, heterosexual male bullshit, which is about fear and control. And of course, gay people can get scared and controlly too. But the best part of us is understanding empathy, and that we're part of a community of outsiders. I'll get off my soapbox now.
No, it's a beautiful
do my
soapbox.
laundry.
I've been thinking a lot ever since basically getting my start in this industry when I did Drag Race. I had already been acting locally in Seattle. I had my whole plan for going from Seattle to New York. I wanted a show to be previewed in Seattle, which happens a lot. And I would originate one of the roles for a new show, and they'd like me so much that they take me to Broadway with the show, and that was my plan. And then one day I auditioned for Drag Race, and I got on, and that ended up being my path instead. And there was so much inherent fear as an actor, having been told my whole life that it's fine to be queer, it's fine to be femme, but I also need to be castable. And castable was code for make yourself blend in and be as heteronormative and as cisnormative as possible so that people will want to cast you and so you don't get pigeonholed. Well, I'll tell you now, pigeonholing has become my favorite thing because I got cornholing and pigeonholing. But like, because I've kind of, like found my niche within the entertainment industry, there's certain roles that are always like, let's go to Jinkx first,
Right.
because I've so cemented myself as a certain kind of performer. And now that like the industry is being called out for representation and letting people play the roles that they're meant to play, letting, if you're going to write a role for a non-binary character, a queer character, a trans femme character, have the actor actually be those things,
Mhm.
rather than a
Mhm.
straight pretty boy um approximating what he thinks a queer person acts like. So it really does feel in many ways like we're at this like point where it almost feels like a renaissance, but also so many things are still not functioning great. So it feels kind of like we've got a lot of work to do, but things feel optimistic, and you're starting to see the efforts of the work pay off.
Yeah.
And there's so much more representation in entertainment than I remember as a child. And you have your foot firmly planted in a lot of that, seeing as Hedwig. You started Hedwig as an off-Broadway show. It became a movie. It's now been on Broadway. You're touring once again with the Origin of Love tour with Stephen Trask. Hedwig continually has rebirths and is revisited time and time again. And I got to see you on Broadway fully with your foot in a boot, your foot in a cast boot,
Oh yeah.
which um any other show I would be like, oh, the lead actor's wearing a cast, a boot on stage. How's that going to work? Somehow, having been very familiar with the show myself at that point, the live show, somehow it just made such perfect sense that Hedwig was wearing this boot, and like now I can't imagine Hedwig not
Without a
having
boot.
a
It
boot
was a
on.
godsend. It was like because Neil Patrick Harris originated choreography, which was for a much younger man than me. So he's very athletic, and I'm like, oh God, I'm not going to get through this. So I had to adapt things, and finally it pushed me too far, and I climbed out of that car and went on the
Mhm.
wrong rung and ripped my meniscus out, and for the rest of the show, kind of had to sit down on the ground. We're doing midnight radio from a seated position on the floor, but I got through it, and then I was like, "Oh, this is a bummer." Then I'm like, "No, this is an opportunity for all kinds of new lines."
Yeah.
So I'm like wearing the cat. I'm like, "Ladies and gentlemen, you're seeing the show with the original cast." And then it
Oh,
was,
so many opportunities for pun
so many
and
opportunities for
wordplay.
gags. Yeah, and then I could humiliate. It was so fun to do the show again. I could even humiliate, James Franco. I used to have a joke that I added, which was, because Hedwig has a terrible accident and kills some deaf children by accident, and that's why she's famous. Because the rock
Mhm,
star was in the car with her, and
mhm.
she goes, "If it weren't for those kids, I'd be singing to the coat check girl, and if I was lucky, James Franco with a handy cam." James, all all the what is it? All the privileges of homosexuality and none of the responsibilities. And one night he came, and I did that line. He came back. He came back after backstage, and I said, "What did you think of the line?" And he goes, "What line?" I was 15 minutes late. I was like, "You motherfucking movie star Hollywood bullshit, coming 15 minutes late to a Broadway show. Fuck you."
That is, what's so funny, without even knowing that you had that James Franco joke in my holiday tour, I actually had a Darren Chris joke in the show, and I was very nervous that he might be there
Right.
in LA, and I was hoping that he would have a very good sense of humor, and it wasn't anything like salacious, it wasn't anything,
Right.
but I did a whole TED talk in the middle of the show about queer baiting, starting with
Um,
real life queer baiters, and then transitioning into talking about Rudolph Frosty and Tiny Tim as queer baiters and relating it back to Christmas. And the Darren Chris joke was, I just did this. It's very scholarly. For too long, Christmas has enjoyed the financial benefit of the queer community and the queer aesthetic, while resting safely in the privilege and security of the cis heteronormative community. And I click the slide, and the next thing that comes up is the album cover, A Very Darren Christmas, where he's dressed as all the members of the family. And there was no joke about Darren Chris other than his album cover coming up for that moment.
I think he would laugh. I do, and then cry.
I had to kind of examine my true feelings about queer baiting, because I would make jokes about people who are definitely in the queer baiting category, but who I also feel are effective allies. I feel like Darren Chris is an effective ally. I actually feel like Harry Styles is an effective ally. The problem's not so much with Harry Styles, it's with people celebrating Harry Styles over the community that he's actually trying to empower.
Forgetting where it comes from. But interestingly, you were talking, and I do want to get into this because you were talking about, finally the non-binary or the trans person can play themselves. And had my own experience with Hedwig dealing with that, because in Australia there was a first-class production starring a guy named Hugh Sheridan, who was a big star there, who had more recently come out, and he was a queer guy, and he had his own, he was kind of finding his own everything, but he also, he's non-binary as well, but as am I don't really like the term, it's defining someone by what they're not, which I don't like. It's kind of like saying woman instead of another word. Non-binary, it's like, this is what you're not. It's like, why don't we say trinary then?
Trinary's good,
right? I like it. You could try, but it's like it creates like third sex, maybe, I don't know. But to me, it's like we're all on a continuum, whether we like it or not, that society says feminine and masculine, and those energies flow in all of us. We can crush them, we can express them, we can hide them away. And this is everybody. This is our butch dad, this is our femme mom. We all have these things that society or ourselves contain or let free. And I found that my feminine side, Hedwig allowed me to finally express it, and it opened me up in many ways. To sexually, gender-wise, creatively, nothing scared me anymore. I felt more like myself. I felt integrated, more whole, like Hedwig wants to be, and I felt safe by it. And anyone who's played the role has been opened up by it. Nothing is harder than playing, right? Nothing's harder than playing that role. Physically and mentally and vocally.
Oh, Jesus Christ, no. Like when I did the show the first time in Seattle, I've done it 3 times. Once as a senior thesis for college, once in Seattle before Drag Race, and then once in a
senior center.
And trust me, those seniors, they had their lighters up.
They don't hide their feelings.
But I was on a strict regimen of, I would sleep all day, get up, get ready for the show, do the show, go home and drink 2 hot toddies, and then sleep until the next show. Because there was nothing, and I had to cut out any form of
sugar
smoking whatsoever.
Yeah,
I was using weed capsules at that point.
You got to eat. You have to eat better. But ultimately, it's everyone I know who played it, like, Korean Idol winners, in Seoul, straight athletes in Japan, all kinds of folks said that it changed them. It changed them for the better. It allowed them to see parts of themselves they hadn't seen. And this actor, I think they quite young, started a petition saying Hedwig may not be played by a cis person. Hedwig is a trans character and must be played by a trans actor. Which was interesting because they didn't cancel the whole show because I'm not trans.
Mm-hmm.
So why didn't they just say it wasn't valid because I wrote it? I don't know. I think they just wanted the role.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, I had to step in because I not only was that actor actually inherently non-binary, but I hadn't actually said it yet. He was just kind of finding his way, and Hedwig was helping him find his way.
Mm-hmm.
It was that I said, guys, if you think of Hedwig as a trans model and a trans statement, you've got to. This is a character who is forced into a gender reassignment by their government,
Mm-hmm.
their boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
This is a story of the patriarchy telling you what is male and what is female. And you better conform to that
Mm-hmm.
or you're doomed. It's about reinforcing the binarchy, which I have a problem with. I do have a problem with the binarchy, saying that for a man, you have to do this, for a woman, you have to be that. And the definition of a woman is having no penis. Again, a negative meaning for the word, just like non-binary, not binary. To me, it's like everything that the piece was about was finding yourself, about finding out who you are as a gender of one. And for someone who hadn't even written it or asked me, what I thought about it, to make a pronouncement, a 21-year-old who hasn't lived that long, but has their dignity as a human, to say that, oh, that character has to be played by a trans person. How trans do you have to be then?
Yeah.
Do you have to be binary trans and post? You know what I mean? It's like, to me, it's like the character is playing Tommy, is playing his mother, is playing Hedwig, is playing a lot of people. And the gender journey is not about the operation, which I call a gender abnegation operation, because she gave up her control completely.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a gender affirmation. It was forced, and it was drag. It was putting on the makeup and the wig and rock and roll that saved that person.
Yeah.
And drag is for everybody.
Yeah.
I truly believe drag is for everybody. And to limit that because you want to play the role is wrong. I understand there's a shortage of roles. God knows. And every piece I write has gender nonconforming characters of all races. Though I don't know if I'm allowed to write a non-white role anymore. You know what I mean? There's a panic about staying in your own lane that can get out of hand, and you suddenly lose imagination. And if
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, please, no, I know exactly what you want to be talking about here. Talk about it.
No, I just I think it's really important for people to hear, that side of it, because I do think, I mean, everything you said, that's the work I did when I was playing Hedwig the first time, and then the second time and the third time, is realizing that this is not a universal trans person's story. This is one person's very specific story about how they transitioned through circumstance, not through self-identity. And when I was very young, and Hedwig was new, the movie was new, at my queer youth resource center that I hung out at in Portland, Oregon, I remember a trans person saying, I love the movie Hedwig and the Angry Inch, but people need to realize it's a drag movie, not a trans movie. It's a movie about a person who created an identity and wore it, not a trans person finding their
true self.
If anything, Hedwig finds her true self by the end, to me, as a non-binary person or as a gender non-conforming person, and realizing that she doesn't have to push herself into one box or the other, that she was already herself, and she let outside influences change her own self-perception, and she found it again by the end. And hearing that person say that early in my life, and that, like, when the material was that new to me, I was like, oh, this isn't the story about a trans woman. This is a story about Hedwig.
Yeah.
And that was really important for me. And oh my God, a painting just fell off my wall.
It was a painting of Hedwig.
It's an omen. But to that point, I think that's why anyone could play Hedwig.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those roles. Yes, the circumstances that Hedwig deals with are very specific, and I would prefer if whoever playing Hedwig is somewhere in the queer community. But I don't think that the gender of the actor is as essential to Hedwig as it would be in other roles.
I agree.
Because it is not about the trans experience. It is about this one character's experience. So I think we are at this point, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think it's the circumstances we're dealing with. We're at this point where we have older generations of trans people and younger generations of trans people who have had wildly different experiences.
Oh yes.
Like, you can't compare the experience of a 20-year-old trans person right now to a 60-year-old trans person because the circumstances were completely different.
Yeah.
So we're kind of seeing this clash between generations, I think, where the younger generation wants everything to be the way that they were taught, which is, they're being taught much bigger, much more accepting messages, and being taught that everything doesn't have to exist on the binary, and being taught that transitioning doesn't mean going from male to female if that's not what that means for you. They have this whole world of opportunities of finding their identity and expressing their identity that past generations didn't have. And to that end, I think the younger generation needs to have a little bit more patience and a little bit more understanding and a little bit more
living.
They need to. I think that people need to see that when the circumstances were different, survival tactics were different. And some of these older queers and queens and trans people out there just
have
did
no
whatever
patience.
it took to survive.
Yeah, and they're angry that they're being told that what they are is not correct. It's like, I fucking survived AIDS. I survived my teeth being kicked out for being a femme boy in the streets, and you're gonna tell me, you 21-year-old, college graduate, and it doesn't have to be that fight. It doesn't have to be that
from
fight.
either end.
No.
The older generations can realize that things are changing and have patience with the younger generation as they're figuring things out. The younger generation can have patience and understand that there's plenty of nuance between everyone's stories. And ultimately, what I would love is if the queer community just had patience and compassion and empathy for each other, so that we focus that angry energy
on the real enemy,
real oppressors.
Thank you. And they're very clear who they are. It's very clear.
Yeah, and I won't take up tons more time with this, but I remember an online feud I saw where an older trans person was saying that they completely embrace non-binary people. They completely embrace, new revolutionary gender movements. But the idea of calling everyone they, them to just de-gender everybody was very triggering for them as a trans person, because they spent their life realizing their true self. They spent their life working towards being able to live their truth as a trans person, and to be called the pronouns that they identify with. And then younger trans people wanting to degender everything because gender is a construct and they want to tear it down, which, more power to you. But when you don't when you assume that everyone should be they, them because that's what you want, you could be disrespecting another trans person who worked really hard to be called she or he. And we have to have
I hadn't heard of that movement to movement to
Well,
call everybody they
I
them.
think
I haven't
there's
heard that.
merit to it because it's like until a person tells you their preferred pronouns, because not
Mm,
everyone is quote unquote passable, which is a whole different
yeah.
battle.
Oh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The whole concept of quote unquote passing is just a fucking, that's nuanced and has plenty of angles to look at it. But
Yeah.
so until someone tells you their preferred pronouns, there's some people who will say they, them until they know a person's preferred pronouns so they don't accidentally misgender that person. But in saying they, them, it's almost still misgendering that person, especially
Right.
if that person is trans and feels like you're telling them that they're not passing.
Right. And of course,
And
this is, and you're talking about, sensitivity. You're talking about a lot of people whose skin is very thin right now. And when you grow up different, that's what happens. You can get thick in one way and very thin in other ways. And we do have to be sensitive, but we also have to have a sense of humor because that is what brings us together
which is
too,
another
is being able
survival
to,
tactic.
yeah. And some people even find that to be inappropriate. It's too much humor when we're talking about things like this. You and I, even though you're younger than me, I feel we have come from the same tribe of how we think about things, and we're both theater people, which is a different vibe that is much more about let's put on a show and get it together, and
Let's give them the old
you're
razzle dazzle.
yeah, we're punch, we're time card actors. We know when we're supposed to show up and when we're not. It's different from being a film person or even a cabaret person because you're more of a theater person. So to me, it's like I want to learn from everybody. I truly want to learn from it. And interestingly, that Australian thing, the guy who didn't, he was so hurt by this. The actor was so hurt by this attack that he tried to commit suicide. And he checked himself into a hospital, and he's doing okay now. And actually, one of the people who led the campaign against him apologized, which was unheard of. But to me, it's like we're all brothers and sisters and siblings here, and we know who the real enemy is. Let us not do Trump's job for him and tear each other
Yeah.
apart. We have so much in common here, and it's a beautiful time. One part of today is very scary, a lack of belief in the truth and, a paranoia. But another side of things, in terms of gender, gender issues, things are getting better, at least in the industrialized world, and a lot of this stuff filters into other cultures, and Hedwig, I'm so thrilled when Hedwig is some person from a country where it never played knew about it and it helped them.
Yeah.
We're about to re-release Short Bus, which did its own work,
Yeah.
which was
Short
about
Bus taught me a lot about sexual liberation, whereas Hedwig taught me a lot about my gender journey. Short Bus was the beginning of my journey, the beginning of me on my
getting your
path as
dick
an
into your mouth.
ethical slut. Yeah.
Did you ever get your dick in your mouth?
When I did ballet.
Is that one of the exercises? That French lady pushing your head down.
Jesus Christ, yeah.
I know. We got a 4K re-release. I was going to come to Portland at the Hollywood Theater there actually and do an event. We'll do it again later in the year. Omicron's, stopped that. But we are re-releasing it in theaters starting at the end of January. IFC in New York, the New Art in LA, and it's going to spread around the country. And I love when people also, I don't have kids, you may not have kids either in the
I have
future,
friends my
but
age who are
our
my
work,
kids, yes.
yeah, yes, we're just as annoying and lovely. But our work is our kids, and Hedwig is my biggest child, and I'm very proud of her going on. I'm not always proud of what she does, or every production. but I love her to be free. And the Original Love Tour is talking about that love and where it came from, and thrilled to have friends who are inspired by it too. In LA, ideally, we're going to have Orville Peck performing with us, who is a big Hedwig fan, and Jake Wesley Rogers. And New York, we had Richard Butler from the Psychedelic Furs, who was an idol of both Stephen and mine. And I'm very happy how my kids have been treated. Apart from my last film that nobody saw. Watch it. How to Talk to Girls at Parties with Nicole Kidman. Come on.
It's Nicole Kidman, people.
You're the Nicole Kidman of the performance art world, honey.
Oh.
Because of the hair.
Well, this.
That's my thing.
Well, we have spent pretty much the entire podcast talking about Hedwig, which I'm perfectly thrilled with. I think it's such it's been a formative piece in my life. I have to imagine it's had an impact on your life.
Yes, somewhat.
But I'd love to talk about a few other things that you are known for. First and foremost, I need to know, were you the voice of Dunkaroos in the 90s?
How do you do your Dunkaroos? Yes, I was. And that
for anyone listening
rent.
Who doesn't know what Dunkaroos are, they are kangaroo-shaped cookies that you dip in frosting. And it's much like those little packets that come with cheese, that spreadable cheese, and a little stack of crackers. It's just like that, but it's cookies and frosting.
It's the first interactive dessert. And it paid my rent for 3 years. God bless Dunkaroos. They've been re-released and they never called me.
Oh, no. Do you think they're just going to play the same clips from before?
I don't know. I went to Australia and they played the clips there and my accent was bad. But they're very forgiving in Australia. And I once did, how do you do your Dunkaroos to Nicole Kidman? And she's like, nar.
I was told at my acting school that I was very proficient in dialects, and I actually was a voice and speech tutor. Ooh. And I taught dialects here. I substitute taught dialects here and there for the school. And I always felt very, very proud of my work as a dialect chameleon. Now I'm married to a British person and I go to the UK all the time, and the consensus is that I'm not very good at UK accents. And generally what they tell me is it's a good, like, quote unquote British accent, but you're not doing any one, you're doing an amalgamation of every British dialect, and in one sentence you sound like you're from the north, and in the next sentence you sound like you're from London. And so I think that American actors think they're better at dialects than they actually are.
Yes, they are. Can Michael do American?
Michael can do a fairly good American accent. It always comes out very nasal and a little bit from the Midwest.
Okay. Little Minnesota.
Yeah, just a little bit. But we definitely tease each other with our dialects. My favorite thing to do is whenever he says, like, no, but that was you, I scream back, not me, not Hermione, you. Now, aside from your Dunkaroos fame, one of my favorite things to watch you on is Shrill, an amazing show based on the writings of Lindy West, starring A.D. Bryant, starring Patty Harrison, and starring John Cameron Mitchell. And you play kind of the anti-John Cameron Mitchell. You play a very much gay, trademark gay, very snarky, mean, older gay man, yes. Which is nothing I find you to be in real life. Is it fun to play a villain?
It is. I would joke, Patty and I would joke, Patty's trans, and we were roommates for the first year of Shrill. It was mostly her up in the attic, sleeping on the ceiling like a spider. And me checking in. Are you okay up there, hon? Yeah. Bring me a fly. I love Patty, but both of us were like, we're playing kind of the villains
Mhm.
in Shrill. She plays my surrogate daughter
Mhm.
slash the secretary, and we had all this improv they never really used. My favorite improv of Patty, who's one of the funniest people I know, is she says to me as her boss, she goes, "Look, you may be my master, and I may be your cat, but when you die, I'll eat you. And you know what? A dog will wait a day, but not a cat." So we get to
Oh.
play villains. For a few years there, when people were trying to be PC in Hollywood, none of the gay people could be villains because there were too many of them in the past.
Mhm.
They were either victims or villains, right?
Mhm.
Like Hannibal Lecter, or not Hannibal Lecter, but the other guy. Uh,
Buffalo
the
Bill.
guy, yeah, Buffalo Bill, who was not exactly queer, but there was a kind of, in the audience's mind, it was a terrifying queer person. So we're so liberated now that we can play evil people again.
Yeah.
So that's all I've been doing for the last few years. I played that character. I played a character based on Milo Yiannopoulos in The Good Fight,
Mhm.
the evil Trump gay.
Mhm.
And now I'm playing Joe Exotic.
Yes, and let's talk about that for a second. First of all, the images of you as Joe Exotic, terrifying because you really
Kind
sell
of.
it. You really kind of pull it off. I'm looking at you right now with your two-tone hair and your sweet impish face, and I'm looking at these pictures of you as Joe Exotic, and it's hard to believe the two people are the same person. You said you had a quote for me from Joe Exotic about you
Yes.
playing Joe Exotic.
Well, Joe posted, I think it was after Nick Cage's Joe Exotic project fell apart. He's like, I don't want Nick Cage or John Cameron Mitchell to play me because they don't know who I am. And and he said Cameron Mitchell's gonna make me look like a flaming faggot. And my response was, a painted nails emoji. And I was like, honey, you don't even know how much the show is going to humanize you. It's so empathetic.
Mm.
Kate McKinnon plays Carol Baskin.
Which also blows my mind. And
Hello.
how amazing it is that it's the two of you, two prominent queer people, two like just wildly talented people playing two of the most enigmatic.
Damage.
Oh my gosh.
Crazy.
I had to watch season 2. I had to watch season 2 of Tiger King, the highlights for a Netflix Queens Who Like to Watch. I was filling in for Trixie, and we watched the highlights, about an hour and a half of highlights of season 2 of Tiger King. Let me tell you what's not in season 2 of Tiger King. Tigers. The tigers don't mean shit anymore to the story.
Nope.
Now we are just watching some of the
The
most
worst people in the world.
crazy evil people in Florida just be crazy evil people. And the part that like both blew my mind and was hilarious for the comedy that we were building off of it was that every person, no matter how virtuous they seemed, no matter how well intended they seemed, in this whole exotic animal trade world, every single one of them ended their statement with, "And if he's got a problem with it, he can come to my property, and I've got a 9mm locked
Every
and loaded."
one of them.
Every goddamn one of them.
Every one of them is a survivalist cult leader with a number of sister wives or brother husbands. I had 4 of them in the show, and I loved them all. But it was really fun. I'd never had more fun acting in front of the camera, including Hedwig, because I was directing Hedwig, so it was really hard. This I didn't have to direct, even though I sometimes acted like I did. But I loved everybody on it, the writers, the directors, the crew. The cameraman was my favorite. His name was Mango, and he was like this little kind of golem-like creature in black, and he had more power than anyone on set. Usually a camera operator is not that important, but he seemed to be as important as a cinematographer. And, I used to jibe him, and I gave him an inflatable hot tub as a gift because he was, his back was hurting. And at the end of it, he said, Jill, let's go for a smoko. Just a smoke break. Leave me alone. I'm on a smoko. John, I hate actors. I hate it. And I'm like, but I like you because you're one of us. You're one of us.
You're a daywalker, John. You've lived on both sides of the camera.
I want to be one of the guys, even though I never will be. But I had a fucking blast doing it. Kate and I had a great time. We only had 3 scenes, but we even made out in one of them. And my boyfriends are wonderful actors. It's packed with people that are, what's his name? Kyle MacLachlan's, playing Carol's husband. I don't know how good it's going to be, but I had a blast. I really did. And I want to act more now. I kind of gave it up after Hedwig for 12 years because I was burnt. But now I'm kind of ready to act. I'm working on some TV and podcast series also. But I'm just excited about Tiger King coming out in the beginning of March.
Well, congratulations.
On Peacock.
I can't, I adore you. I adore Kate McKinnon. She's been a lovely friend to me. Starting way back at the same show in New York, the Vaudevillians. That was also how I met Kate for the first time. And she's been an avid supporter of the live entertainment drag world. And y'all are both just so talented and such I won't call you role models. I won't put that pressure on you, but you definitely do the community proud, both of you.
Did you see that chick when the show where she did the Lonely Christmas sketch?
No, I haven't.
Oh, yet. It's so funny. She's like an old lady who's alone at Christmas, and Billie Eilish does a message in the window, "Come over for Christmas dinner." And she's like, "Really?" And she writes a message, "Will there be any Black people there?"
Oh God.
And Billie's like, "I don't think so. Jews? I think it's just my family. I don't think there's any Jews. Could you check?" She becomes the worst.
Jesus Christ.
And she's like, "I didn't kill my husband." She's just the best. The best.
I can't wait to see you both embody those characters. And I feel like I had one more anecdote that I was going to say before I shifted into my closeout questions, and now it's gone. But if it comes back to me, I'm going to interrupt you abruptly.
You're in your anecdotes. You're in your
anecdotes.
You're in your anecdotage.
This is the anecdote.
Yeah.
This made my entire world. When the script of Hedwig and the Angry Inch, the live show, has lots of room for improvisation. It encourages the performer to personalize and customize the Hedwig performance to the locale, to the person playing Hedwig. There's a lot of freedom within the script. Of course, we tried to take our liberties sparingly, so we weren't just rewriting your show. But my director, Ian Bell, when we did it in Seattle, he and I came up with a joke, building off of the joke that's already in the script. You can't always get what you want.
Which refers to a German philosopher. Right,
and then we added, but sometimes you just might find you get what you Nietzsche. And I told you that joke, and I think you said the RuPaul line, "Consider that stolen." And when I saw you on Broadway and that joke was in the show, the whole audience chuckled. The whole audience was like laughing at the joke, giving it the appropriate amount of audience laughter. But I sat in my seat just screaming my head off, annoying everyone around me because I could not believe it made it into the show. And then here I was, after the show, you invited me back to say hello in the dressing room. And there were so many people waiting to say hi to you after the show. And I was like, I hadn't seen you in years, and we had only like sparsely interacted at that point. And I was so nervous that you weren't even going to recognize me, or like, oh my gosh, I feel so out of place. All these people are like schmoozing with each other, waiting for you to come out. And you came out and you made a beeline for me. And before saying hello to anyone else, you went straight up to me and said, "Did you hear the line in the show?" It made my entire life. Thank you for that experience, John. And thank you so much for your contribution to the world with Hedwig and your other films. Let's not forget your other children. Everyone should watch Short Bus and How to Talk to Girls at Parties. And if the Origin of Love tour comes to your town, be sure to see it if it's safe to do so, and wear your masks, God damn it, and get vaccinated and boosted, everybody, so that I can have my job back. John, these are the questions that I ask every guest on my show.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about how to answer them. Just answer from your heart.
Okay.
First one is, who is your celebrity crush today?
Well, I mean, there's the people that is it someone I want to fuck, maybe? Or someone I used
to try to direct the person into talking about who they want to fuck until Monet Exchange took it so far that I've now opened the question up to everyone.
I mean, I have two living heroines, who don't necessarily want to fuck, are Jenna Rollins, who I believe is the greatest screen actress we ever had. She was John Cassavetes' husband, and her films with him, especially A Woman Under the Influence, changed my life. And a gospel soul singer, Mavis Staples, who I've always loved. She was in the Staple Singers. If people don't know that group, you probably know the song "I'll Take You There." And I haven't met her, but I've just bought a house in New Orleans with Tiger King money, laundered it, and I'm ready to become, which is Jennifer Coolidge, who lives in New Orleans also. I'm ready to become her. And I've commissioned 2 stained glass portraits. I love stained glass. One of Jenna and one of Mavis Staples, and another one of Paul Dawson from Short Bus coming into his own mouth. So that'll be in the bathroom.
Perfect. My next question for you is, are you spiritual?
I am spiritual. I talk a lot about I grew up very Catholic, and obviously that didn't work out. But I love the pageantry. I love, some of the philosophy about, loving your neighbor and such. And I really am into the Gnostic Gospels, which is a way of looking at Christianity that wasn't about masculine control and authority and hierarchical church. So check out a slim volume called the Gnostic Gospels by Elaine Pagels, Pagels, and it'll make you spiritual again if you rejected your Christianity when you were young.
I love a good book recommendation.
Yeah, Gnostic with a G.
And my final question for you is, what is your go-to karaoke song?
Oh, I usually don't like to do karaoke or dress up for Halloween and stuff because it reminds me of work.
Yeah.
But I think when I have done karaoke, because it's the thing of keys, you can't always hit a woman's key if you're a man. You can. But I think the last
I never hit puberty.
Oh, all right, little Jimmy Scott, little Jimmy Jinkx. But I think my favorite song was Holly Holy by Neil Diamond. Holly Holy Dream. I just saw that Will Ferrell sketch. Remember when he did the Unplugged Storytellers as Neil Diamond? He was like, this song is about when I killed a drifter to get an erection. Crackling Rosie. Sorry, I don't know where that came to me. So there, Holly Holy, Neil Diamond.
Lovely. I'm not familiar, but I'll
give it
I'll give it a listen after this. For you,
it's
John.
It's a good one.
I want to encourage all of my listeners to look into your body of work. If you haven't seen Shrill, it's all on Hulu if you're in the US, and I'm sure you can find a way to watch it anywhere else. Hedwig and the Angry Inch, Short Bus, How to Talk to Girls at Parties.
Rabbit Hole.
Rabbit Hole.
And you say it like it's dirty.
No, I love rabbits. I love holes. I don't always do like a public service announcement at the end of the podcast, but we talked about some nuanced, complex things today, and I hope all my listeners take away from our conversation about gender that we can all stand to have a little bit more compassion, patience, and empathy for one another within the LGBTQ plus community. Yeah. I hope that everyone gives room to each other's experiences. I hope that we practice not jumping to anger immediately. Look at context clues. Give a moment to try to take in the other person's experience, and take a moment to realize that we all come from different backgrounds. We were born in different times. We all come from different locales, and those things shape our experiences immensely. If we have more patience for each other, we can unify against the actual enemies, and they are abundant.
They are.
And one thing that they do very well is they all close ranks and they all follow their leader.
Choose a dictator. Yeah. People on the left don't like dictators or to be told what to do. But
since we don't have a queer dictator right now, we need to unify in our own actions and our own empathy towards each other so that we are focusing our energies against the actual enemies and oppressors. So please take time to listen to each other's stories and have room for each other's experiences. And, then when we call out people within our community, maybe it's a little bit more informed and not so much jump into the gun.
Right. And maybe even a call in.
Yeah. I think calling in is extremely important, especially if there's a bevy of context clues to let you know that maybe this person isn't a horrible person. Right. Maybe they need someone like you to call in and educate them on a topic that they have yet to encounter in their own life.
That's right.
So that's my wish for all my listeners and for our community at large.
I nominate you as our queer dictator. All hail!
Don't you have to be 35 and have served in the military to be a dictator?
Not the queer dictator.
Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today, John Cameron Mitchell.
I love you, honey. Give my love to Michael, and we'll see each other after the storm. As a basis.
I absolutely will. And thank you all so much for listening to Hi Jinkx here on the Forever Dog and Moguls of Media Network. My name is Jinkx Monsoon, and we have new episodes every Wednesday, so make sure to search for Hi Jinkx on your favorite podcast app and hit subscribe. You can follow me at The Jinkx on Instagram and at Jinkx Monsoon everywhere else. And I'll see you next Wednesday for some more Hi Jinkx.
Forever Dog.
To listen to Hi Jinkx ad-free and one day early, sign up for Forever Dog Plus at foreverdogpodcasts.com/plus. Hi Jinkx is produced by Forever Dog and Moguls of Media, aka Mom. Hosted by me, Jinkx Monsoon, produced by Joseph Shepard, editing and sound design by Will Pitts, and executive produced by Willem Belli, Alaska Thunderfuck, Brett Boehm, Big Dipper, Joe Cilio, and Alex Ramsey.